Previously on Dr. Gangrene's YouTube channel.
As the last part of this tag game, I'm also supposed to nominate someone else to continue this. So I nominate my good friend Derek Cook over at Monster Kid Radio.
The Vincent Price Tag started a little bit ago over at the Late Late Horror Show. I don't know when that YouTube channel actually launched this game or challenge, but somehow it made its way over to Dr. Gangrene's YouTube channel, which I'll make sure there's a link to down below in the comments. And as you saw at the beginning of this video, Dr. Gangrene challenged me. Now, the Vincent Price Tag reminded me a lot of the Classic 5 game that we play on the Monster Kid Radio podcast, where I've got random questions that have to do with classic monster movies. Well, the Vincent Price Tag is like that, but it's specific to Vincent Price. And instead of being randomly drawn from a deck of cards, there's 10 set questions, and because I was challenged, here are my answers. What is your favorite Vincent Price horror film? I thought long and hard about this one because I love a lot of Vincent Price horror films, but for the sake of variety, I thought I'd go outside of some movies that I'm going to talk about later on in this tag and talk about the movie The Haunted Palace, which I believe is the very first time H.P. Lovecraft was adapted for the silver screen. And it's not just Vincent Price, he's also got Lon Chaney Jr. in the mix. And that's amazing to see these two horror icons in a Lovecraft adaptation. Now, when the movie came out, it was billed as an Edgar Allan Poe film because at the time, I don't think Roger Corman trusted the public to know who Lovecraft was. Or maybe it was a studio mandate. Whatever the reason, it is a Lovecraft adaptation, and it's amazing. I love the special makeup effects. I love the production design. I love the way it looks and the way it sounds. And Vincent Price gets to play a dual role. You get like two Vincent Prices for one, kind of, sort of. What is your favorite Vincent Price non-horror film? This is another tough one because Vincent Price, even though he's known as a horror icon, he did a lot of work. And there's a handful of movies that I really enjoy that have him in them that don't have the horrific elements. So, I really went through and tried to narrow it down. The movie I settled on was not Shock. Now, Shock turns up on a lot of these 50 packs that you can get from Mill Creek Public Domain Films, and I really like it. Now, it's a thriller, which kind of sort of puts it in that horror realm, so I tried to stay away from that one. And I'm going to settle on a movie called The Baron of Arizona, which is also a movie that Dr. Gangrene put on his own list. The Baron of Arizona is about Vincent Price basically trying to take over the state of Arizona, but doing it in a very slick, Weasley kind of way. So he's still a little dastardly, but not full-on horror, and it's a great film. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. Who would win in a fight between the Triumvirate of Evil, Vincent Price, Christopher Lee, or Peter Cushing? This tag is about Vincent Price, so you think you might go Vincent Price with this. And I've got a mad love for all things Peter Cushing, so you think I might go there, but I'm actually going to go with Christopher Lee. And the reason is, well, Christopher Lee was a bigger, imposing man. Now, I know Vincent Price himself was a tall guy. I get that. But there's just something raw and animalistic about Christopher Lee when he wants to be the bad guy. Whether he's Count Dooku in Star Wars, Count Dracula for Hammer, or anything else that he's done where he's the villain, there's just something menacing about Christopher Lee, which I don't get compared to the menacing characters played by Vincent Price or even Peter Cushing. Now, don't get me wrong, those characters are just as evil and menacing, but in terms of raw power, I'm probably going to go with Christopher Lee. What is Vincent Price's best contribution to a music album? Michael Jackson's Thriller or Alice Cooper's Welcome to My Nightmare? I'm biased because I grew up loving the song Thriller and the music video Thriller, and the VHS tape of the making of Michael Jackson's Thriller. So I'm going to go with Thriller on this one. Now, his Welcome to My Nightmare work with Alice Cooper is solid, but it didn't have the kind of impact that Thriller had on me. And I don't know if it's because I didn't listen to the kind of music that Alice Cooper made back when I was growing up. When that came out, it didn't really have the impact that Thriller did. I don't know why. It just wasn't in my orbit or on my radar. So I'm probably going to go with Thriller. Plus, Thriller's got horror iconography that, well, Welcome to My Nightmare does have, just not as much, And because it was more accessible with the VHS tape and the making of, I'm going to go with Thriller. Michael Jackson's Thriller for the win. Replace any actor in a horror movie with Vincent Price. What actor and what movie? This one is really tough. People who listen to me on my podcast know that I try to find something that I like about pretty much any classic monster movie that I watch. Any horror movie that I watch of the Monster Kid Radio wheelhouse era, the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and maybe even a little bit of the 70s. I always try to find something positive to latch onto. I have yet to find a classic monster movie that I don't like. So it's really hard to think about replacing somebody in one of these classic or not so classic monster movies that I love so much. But I came up with one. Frankenstein and the Space Monster. Now, hear me out. I'd like to see Vincent Price play the James Karen character in Frankenstein and the Space Monster. Now, the James Karen character is the doctor that's responsible for building the robot named Frank in Frankenstein Meets the Space Monster. And I just think it would be kind of neat. I mean, we eventually see Vincent Price play somebody who creates artificial life. I mean, probably most notably with Edward Scissorhands, the Tim Burton film. Or if you go back, there was actually a TV performance where he played a Dr. Frankenstein character. It's done a little cheeky. There's a song and dance number. But, to have him play, I'm going to say seriously, even though we're talking about Frankenstein Meets the Space Monster, to have him play seriously a Dr. Frankenstein type would be really cool. If you were in a movie with Vincent Price, chances are he'd kill you. How would you want Price to kill your character? Man, this is another really tough one. I know Vincent Price played characters that kill a lot of people. House of Wax, Mad Magician, the Dr. Phibes movies, Madhouse. It's really tough. If I were to be in a movie with Price and he got to kill the character that I was playing, I'd want it to be something pretty grandiose and dramatic, but I'd want it to have a little bit of class too. So maybe something like in The Mad Magician, where I'm worked into some sort of magic performance, a magic act, and oops, I don't make it out. That's what I'd want. Kill me via stage magic. Vincent Price guest starred on many classic TV shows. What is your favorite? Oh man, this is another one that's really tough because Price did a lot of television, especially in the 70s. Now, some of my favorite Price television was in the Night Gallery when he appeared in the Night Gallery episode The Return of the Sorcerer, which is based on a Clark Ashton Smith short story. Also starred Bill Bixby, but was he really guest starring in that? I mean, it was an anthology TV series, so every week was another cast, so I don't know if that really counts. I went through and I dug deep and tried to find something unique that I really liked that I could talk about here. Of course, I love him in The Brady Bunch, which is what Dr. Gangrene picked. I love seeing him in that episode. Plus, that episode was directed by Jack Arnold, so that's kind of cool too. But I've been into a lot of 70s television lately. Dramas, not necessarily comedies or sitcoms or family pieces or whatever, but 70s suspense and drama television. And I found an episode not too long ago of The Bionic Woman in which Vincent Price appears, and that, I think, is my favorite episode. The episode is called Black Magic, and in it, Vincent Price, again, plays a dual role. He is a member of a family that all converge on this kind of sort of spooky house for the reading of a will, because the oldest brother passed away, and there's supposedly a fortune to give away. Now, Jamie Summers gets involved because something that might be in the estate is some secret plans for something or other, but Vincent Price plays not just the elder brother who passes away, and we see later in a videotape, or I guess they call it a TV recording. It wasn't really VHS technology at that time, but he does appear in the television episode as the guy saying, this is what's going to happen, y'all have to stay overnight, and yeah, anyway, it's really neat to see that. He's got some old age makeup, but he also plays the younger brother who, along with some of the other guests, including Julie Newmar, trying to off one another, maybe kind of sneak around each other's back to see if they can figure out where the loot is, where the estate is, because the terms of the will for that only one person is going to get it all. It's a fun episode, and that's my pick here. Vincent Price starred in 8 films with the word house in the title. What is your favorite? Off the top of my head, what is there? Madhouse, House of Long Shadows, House on Haunted Hill, House of Wax, House of Seven Gay Bl- There's a lot of them. And for my money, I'm going to go with House on Haunted Hill. I love this movie quite a bit, and there's just something about Vincent Price in a suit that puts you on edge. I know that he wore a suit in a lot of his earlier non-horror work, like Laura and Shock, like I talked about earlier, but there's just something intimidating when Vincent Price has that smirk, that gleam in his eyes, a nice tie, a suit jacket, and he invites you to a haunted house, or a hill house, or a house that should be haunt. It's a great film. It's smooth, it's slick, it's William Castle directed, so you know it's quality. Right? If Vincent Price could read you a bedtime story, what would it be? The man had an incredible voice. It was no mistake that he got into doing radio drama. The Price of Fear and the things he did with BBC Radio, just solid work. The man's voice, so good, yet so menacing. If you find any recordings of him reading Edgar Allan Poe, or even the performances that he did on stage or for film, it's really good work. Now, this is what Dr. Gangrene also picked, was anything by Edgar Allan Poe. But you know what? I'm going to go a little different here because I've also heard him read, or at least be involved in, some of Bram Stoker's Dracula. And I think that's what I'd want. Actually, you know what? Strike that. I want to hear him read Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. That's what I want, because I'm a weirdo, and I think Mary Shelley's Frankenstein would make a great bedtime story. Vincent Price lent his voice to several animated films and shows. What is your favorite? He did quite a few short subjects and films that were animated that he either narrated or maybe introduced, but in terms of actually playing characters on screen, I don't think he did nearly as many, which kind of narrows this down quite a bit to The Great Mouse Detective, or what I'm going to pick, which was actually a TV series, The 13 Ghosts of Scooby-Doo. I mean, come on. To have a character that looks like Vincent Price, voiced by Vincent Price, in the Scooby-Doo series, that's what I want. That is my favorite. And it's kind of what I've been watching a lot of lately anyway. This Vincent Price tag was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. I love Vincent Price. Now, I haven't seen everything the man's done, not like Dr. Gangrene or some other fans, but everything that I've seen, I've enjoyed. I mean, I've got a Tingler hanging above me here because I love the Tingler. I love Vincent Price. The man can do no wrong. I hope I didn't do wrong with this video. If you disagree with my picks, or you agree with my picks, or want to tell me what your picks are, I'd love to hear them, or I guess read them, in the comments down below. Now, this tag game is supposed to continue when I tag somebody else to participate in the Vincent Price tag. Now, this is my bad, because I'm still relatively new to being a YouTuber, being involved in the YouTube community. So I don't have a YouTube channel that I can tag. However, there are some other outlets that I'd like to tag. I'd like to tag the Classic Horrors Club podcast. I love this show. It's a lot of fun. Jeff and Rich work real hard to put out a quality podcast, and I know they love Vincent Price, so I'd love to hear their take on the Vincent Price tag. I'd also like to tag a few websites. Let's start with the Shadow Over Portland over at shadowoverportland.blogspot.com. The Shadow Over Portland is run by my friend Chris McMillan. He's a longtime friend, an excellent author. He's been a guest on Monster Kid Radio quite a bit, and I'd be real curious to hear his picks for this Vincent Price tag. I'm also going to tag my friend Dominique Lamzes over at the University of the Bazaar at the universityofthebazaar.wordpress.com. Dominique is also an excellent author, and she's also been on Monster Kid Radio quite a bit, and she's a great friend. And finally, I'm also going to tag the Hitless Wonder Movie blog, which is run by my friend Dan Day Jr. And you can find that at dandayjr35.blogspot.com. He too has been on Monster Kid Radio, but all three of these people are also excellent bloggers and writers, and I'm real curious to hear their Vincent Price tag answers. That was a lot of fun. Dr. Gangrene, thank you for tagging me in the Vincent Price tag game. It's a lot of fun to think about some Vincent Price movies and properties in a way that I hadn't really considered before. Plus, it gave me a chance to talk about the Bionic Woman. Who would have thought that would have ever happened here on the Monster Kid Radio on YouTube channel? You can always find me on Monster Kid Radio, the podcast, every week at monsterkidradio.net. I put out a new episode where we talk about the classic, or sometimes not so classic, genre cinema of yesteryear. In the past, Dr. Gangrene has been a guest on the show, oftentimes talking about Vincent Price films. Please subscribe to this channel on YouTube, give us a thumbs up if you liked it, and maybe even hit that little bell for notifications so that you get notified every time I upload a new video to the Monster Kid Radio on YouTube channel. My name's Derek M. Cook. Talk to you next time.